Hey everybody, this is Justin with BuildOps. Today we're going to be talking about sales plans. We're going to give everybody a couple minutes to get in here, but we will try to get started maybe just a minute after the hour. Really appreciate the time, everybody. Again, my name's Justin. I'm with BuildOps. We'll get let everyone have a couple minutes to trickle in, get loaded up, and then we'll go ahead and kick things off. So if you're already in here, which looks like a lot of folks are, just hang tight. We'll give them another 60 seconds or so and be able to rock and roll. All right, awesome. Looks like we got most of the registrants actually already made it in. So really appreciate the time, everybody. My name's Justin Weatherby. I'm with BuildOps. Today we're going to be talking about how to develop successful sales plans. And this is one thing that gets overlooked a little bit, the focus on sales when it comes to commercial trade contractors. So just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. Um, uh, I'm half of the dynamic duo. Woody Woodall wasn't able to make it today, had a last minute conflict, but it's all right. I'll take care of you guys. I want to keep this as interactive as possible. Now, I see there's a ton of people in the room, so unfortunately, I can't turn your microphones on because it'll just be a disaster. But that said, look at your Zoom controls, usually somewhere in the bottom of the screen, and there should be a section for Q&A, question and answer. So at any point as I'm going through this, and you've got a question, throw it in there. I'll do my best to answer it live. I usually get to them all, but if for some reason I'm not able to get to it, we'll follow up, via email with you. And then also, I want you to use your keyboard and mouse to answer some of the poll questions that I've got going, because we'll share those results with everybody here. It's all anonymous, so don't worry about answering it. And that said, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and just kind of launch the first one. Just understand who we got in the room today. So if you would grab your mouse, the quicker you guys can get these answered, the quicker I can close it and sort of move on to the next thing. Also, this webinar will be recorded. So, if you have to jump off or someone else wants to see it, you'll be able to forward it over to them. Looks like we've got 5 or 6 people. Still need to get this thing answered. Oh, cool. There they are. Perfect. We'll go ahead and end this, share the results. You know what? I don't know. I don't know exactly what we missed there from the poll question, but there's a whole lot of other. If you fall into that other category, throw that in the Q&A section because I'd really like to know so I can sort of um, take the talk track that direction and then also sort of share that with the rest of the team. Strong HVAC and electrical, plumbing and fire life safety is in there too a little bit. But ton of people kind of fall into that other category. Throw it in the Q&A just so I know who we're chatting with. So with that said, let's kind of hop right into it. We're going to do a little bit of PowerPoint, but I want to get into product. I also want to answer questions from you. And also, I keep saying like ask questions. If you got something you want me to share with the team, like, hey, this is something that's worked for us, something that you want to share with the larger group, feel free to throw that in the Q&A section as well. I want to try to keep this as interactive as possible because to be honest with you, it's kind of rough for me to sit up here and sort of just talk to myself. So we're going to be talking about successful sales plans and what's happened over the years. And this is true with almost every single, contractor out there. A lot of your team, if not the owner and the founder themselves, most of them has started out in the field, right? And they've worked, for a decade or more out in the field, moved their way in the office, kind of moved up the chain from there. Some of those folks went started their own company. And this is a story I hear over and over again. And the reason why we want to focus on sales planning and make that a priority is because your folks out in the field who've sort of come up through that path that I described, they don't have like a true focused sales background, right? A lot of them were technicians or, project managers. And, we're all about, providing a high level of customer service. And I'm guilty of this as well, right? I didn't really care to sell. But that said, with my experience, with my, with my knowledge, in a construction company, those type of people are your best salespeople because they're the most credible, and they're the most passionate. So that's why we're going to talk about sales plans and what it takes to put those together and sort of why we're focusing on those. Number one, anytime you're going to be making a change within your business, you need to be setting up goals, right? You need to be able to measure. The old saying is um, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so for those folks who may or may not have something in place today, it's sort of like a funnel that you want to create. You know, calls, appointments, quotes, and then one business. Now that's an oversimplified funnel for some folks, but that's the idea: is you got to feed the top if you want the money to come out the bottom. So with that said, what type of things should we be looking at? How many proposals are we getting out? How many times are we touching, our customers? Are we able to turn these things over? What type of work are we winning? Those are all important metrics, and we'll show you how y'all can track those in here as well. And understand that when you're looking to sell, don't just sell anything that sticks to the wall. Understand what you guys are good at, understand what your niche might be, and double down on that. Some folks kind of go with this wide approach, this shotgun approach. And unfortunately, most of the pellets you shoot with a shotgun, they miss, right? Now, if you're shooting a slug, that's kind of what we're looking at here. We want to be more focused with our targeting, instead of just spreading this across the wall. So understand internally what you all do best, where you differentiate yourself. And number one, when we're looking at sales strategies, while the end goal is revenue, what you got to do is make sure that you're putting your customer first and always bring value to that customer. Now, when you're setting goals, you really want to make sure that these goals are attainable and they're very clear, and they're simple. When you're starting out, you don't need 24 metrics that you're tracking, right? You want to stay focused. Keep it simple for the team to track those metrics that are important to you, and then make sure that we're being very disciplined about it. Because if you got one salesperson who isn't following the process, that's going to skew your numbers and it's going to make things very difficult. So you want to make sure that we have discipline when we do decide what we want to be tracking, that we're making sure we're getting that information in there. We've got we got a handful of folks, from refrigeration. I asked you all before that fell into the other. Looks like a couple roofing folks in there, some low voltage. And this kind of applies across the board there. Um, so when we're talking about this, if there's anything that you've kind of seen specifically in your process or in your plan, that's been successful, throw it in here because I'll be sure to share it with the rest of the team. Now, I mentioned to stay quick on your mouse and on your keyboard, because I want to throw another poll question out there to you. I'm just curious, today, for the folks who've got their sales plan, how well is that thing working for you? Is that something that y'all are crushing on that you could use a little extra help with? And for those folks that do need, some help with that, throw it in the Q&A section as far as what you all might need help on specifically, so I can be sure to address that as we're going through this and also going through the product as well. I'll give you all just another second or two to get that thing answered up for me. All right, good deal. So sharing those results, 60-40 split, just about. Folks that got one in place today that you're happy with, there's always some ways to drive a little bit more revenue out of that. And we'll talk about some of those ways we can maximize revenue with our current customer base and some of the current processes that we're running today. Um, Big thing, money drives behavior, right? Incentives, right, drive behavior. So you've got to make sure whatever sort of incentives that you're offering, whether that's a bonus, whether it's a commission, whether it's another carrot that you might be dangling out there, make sure that there is a direct line between the goals you want to achieve and the way your incentive plan is set up. I've seen this time and time again, that the incentive plan doesn't keep up with the changing needs or the changing goals, the changing directions of our estimating and sales teams. And don't be afraid. It's not always a fun conversation to have, but don't be afraid to change and update your incentive plan, because ultimately that has to evolve as the targets of the business and of the teams are evolving there. I'm curious for any of the folks out there today, if you've got some sort of parameters that you use for incentive, right? Is it a monthly thing? Is it a quarterly thing? Is it a team goal? Is it an individual goal? Just throw that in the Q&A section, because I'd love to sort of share what at a high level what some folks are doing out there. There's arguments to be made on either direction. You do want to incentivize your top performers, but you also want to bring the team up as well, so you don't end up with infighting. But that said, when you're developing a incentive plan, you want your team to be above goal. The way you set this up is critical to their motivation, and keeping them engaged. If you set those goals too high and you're always missing those targets as a salesperson, you're going to feel disenfranchised. You're going to start. It's a lot like batting in baseball. If you start missing pitches and you start overthinking it, you're all of a sudden going to be swinging at stuff in the dirt. So make sure that those incentive plans are actually built so that they overperform. Now, we don't need to overpay, but we want to make sure that they're performing to goal. Looks like some folks are doing a monthly and an annual. I like that idea because it's going to incentivize me to close every month. But also, I know if I've got a bad month, I'm still working towards that annual goal. We got a monthly and quarterly, and Jimmy, we're doing team goals as well as individual goals as well. I think there's always a balance there, but make sure you're going back in that incentive plan, whatever the focus is of the business, that we're really focusing our incentive plan. Now, when we're coming in and we're putting together and we're introducing these new strategies, you should guarantee you're going to get pushback, right? They're going to challenge you. Some folks only like to sell certain types of work, and it's what they're comfortable with, right? So, we've got to, make sure that we go into this knowing that it's going to make some folks uncomfortable, and you want to let them know ahead of time that they are going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to listen to their feedback, but ultimately we're making these changes, we're putting these processes in place to make them more successful, and also to make sure that the company stays successful. Because at the end of the day, if we're failing on the front end, there's only so much we can make up on the back end. So we want to make sure that we verbalize to our team that they are going to have challenges along the way, and that while we'll take their feedback, we're not necessarily going to give up on this plan just because it made them uncomfortable. And getting ahead of that is part of change management. And every time you're getting into a new process, whether it's on the sales or the service or the construction side of things, you want to make sure that you're able to communicate that and get that ahead of get ahead of that. Plans got to be real specific, right? Make sure that you're lining those out with goals of focus, with areas of service, that you want to focus on, total goals, whether those are objectives or wins or numbers of proposals. Make sure that in the industry you're representing, have send your team out there to any sort of event where you might find your customers and where your customers might be going. Always understand that while we can put a plan in place, training is going to be a big one. And make sure you've got resources for training. Set the goals, measure against those goals, and then train to help meet those goals. And always have collaboration within those groups. When we're coming in here, we want to understand which customers are the ones that we want to be targeting. Too often we come into this and we're just trying to cast a wide net, but not only are there certain types of work that are more profitable for your company, there's certain types of customers as well. And this can range, right? If you're a trade contractor working for a general versus owner direct, working for building managers or property management companies, is this retail? Is it retail space? Is it, warehouse? Is it industrial, manufacturing, healthcare, institutional, educational? So all of those different items you're going to want to be able to track and then record the metrics against those as well. As we talked about it before, we got to meet monthly. We got to have goals annually. And the key here is the ongoing communication. If we're going to put a plan into place, we need to be able to keep communicating that plan with the team to keep them on track. This isn't something where we have one meeting at the beginning of the year and then we have one meeting at the end of the year to see how we did. We want to be, meeting on this on a continual cadence. Now, what I'll show you with what we're able to do in BuildOps, we can actually help out a ton of that visibility so that your team doesn't have to wait to be told how they did. They're going to be able to see how they're performing against those goals. Big thing that gets missed, especially in the construction world, is as a team, you got to celebrate the wins. When you guys come in there and you land a new contract or you hit a goal, I don't care what it is. It can be a little pizza. You can just order pizza, do a pizza party, whatever it is. Celebrate those goals, recognize those achievements, because your sales and estimating, your entire team, they're not robots. You don't just put a quarter in them, and something pops out the other side. They're people, right? They're not robots. It isn't AI. These are real people, and you got to keep them motivated. And you need to recognize the effort, even if we fall short. You need to celebrate the wins, and then we got to make sure that we know that if we can fail together. We're going to fail quickly, make an adjustment, and then sort of move forward on that. And that, I think, is a big one. When you're looking into the future, sort of as we progress with the sales plan and the support of our sales team, it's crucial to keep some things in mind, right? Remember how we want to grow our business. Make sure that we're focusing on the positive aspects of that journey. Keep your sales team informed on how we're doing against those. And always, come in with a positive attitude on any of this sort of stuff. So, I'd like to jump into our platform. I hate to be self-serving here a little bit, but really what it ties into is how do we do this, right? What tools do we have in place to make this system work? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in, do a little bit on the product side, make sure we understand some of the values of the metrics and the dashboards and the reporting that we're going to have available. But number one, it starts with a lead. So how do I take a lead in, right? Somebody calls and says, I need work done. What do I do? Well, today, a lot of folks have got spreadsheets or emails. that are being sent back and forth. Maybe there's a binder that gets handed off to somebody's desk. What we want to do is we want to try to do this digitally and quickly. So number one, when that call comes in, we want to figure out, is this a customer we already have information for? Right? Is this an existing customer? Now, what's nice is I can use this search bar up at the top to search for my customers. And I can do this on a number of different sort of levels. One is the contact name. Um, and I didn't even do this on purpose, but I kind of brings up a good function of the system. Even if you fat finger this in here, as long as you're in the ballpark, it's going to return results for you. A lot of other systems, if you don't put it in perfectly, it's gonna look like there's nothing in there at all. You could search by the address of the property. If they had like a phone number, you could look them up by their phone number. Basically, any piece of information that's in the system, we'll be able to do searching and reporting to find that customer. Now, if that customer doesn't truly exist, what's nice is it's very easy to add that customer into the system. We'll just go over to our customer list and smash that button, add new customer. Now within here, basic information, right? What's your phone number? What's your email address? Who are we supposed to be billing? And then we also can add custom fields in here as well. And those custom fields will definitely help sort of structure to your particular business and how you all what might be unique for each company. Now, let's say in this example, our customer exists, right? With current customer. I'm curious, drop it in the chat. How much of your work is for your existing customer base versus net new customers? Anyway, customer record, we can pop in there and then we can see the different service locations that they have, right? So again, we're tying this to a customer and to a location. Most folks out there might work for, might be going after a property management company. And that property management company's got a whole bunch of properties in their portfolio. Or it could be a medical group, like in my example. Of course, like your retail chains, right? Your Walmarts, your Jack in the Boxes, right? You've got a bunch of different service locations for those. And in this case, we'll say they're calling in for the surgery center, and I can see all the quotes that we've got outstanding for them and understand where they are in their life cycle specific, to this location and this customer. And, I can smash the create quote button and fire up a new quote. Now, what's also slick is I took you all the scenic route to get here. Had I just typed in the customer name, I could have created a quote and started that right from here. Now, what happens? Phone call comes into the office. The person on the phone who is taking that phone call, a lot of times isn't the person who's going to be quoting this job. So I've got somebody on the phone. I get their contact information, make sure all of that looks good. I can make adjustments to that contact information if I need to. I could add a net new contact, right, if I needed to on the fly. And what are we going to be quoting in here? Maybe we got a lighting replacement or an RTU replacement or a blow or whatever it is whatever I want to title this quote. Again, I'm not the person who's going to be quoting this. I'm just trying to get as much information and get this directed to who needs this information. And how do I direct it that way? I'm going to pick one of my sales reps. Now, we can do it either by, tagging one of my sales reps, or maybe you've got it broken out by department, right? You got different departments, and when I'm on the phone, I assign it to the right department. The team gets notified. The workflow on this is going to be customizable because we want to be able to suit each company is going to use this a little bit differently. I got you on the phone. Hey, when do you need this by? So, quote due date, right? That's going to be super important on here. Based on whatever information I might be able to get from them, I can put in notes, I could add attachments. And by saving this now, creates a placeholder. There's a report or there's a view that somebody sees, notification maybe somebody gets that now this thing has been created. If you all had any questions on this, feel free to drop them in here. I'll do my best to get those answered. So, in our example, we took the call, we recorded that information. Well, where can it go? Well, one, it could go to like my quotes dashboard, let's say. Now, I don't know that this is the exact information in the exact order that you all want to see it in, but I can actually start moving these columns around and moving this information back and forth, and setting up different views. But based on how I have it set up today, you've got your quote number over here on the left. You've got the status of the quote. We've got some built-in statuses on these quotes, but you can also have um, some custom statuses. We call them tags, right? So, hey, this quote is they requested a revision, or we're waiting on vendor pricing. These are customizable so that you all can sort and filter these however you all see fit. You know, what's the title of the quote? Who's the salesperson? When's this quote due by? Right? We need to get in here. Well, I mean, this is the one we just created. You got to get this out by the 21st. So if I wanted to move some of these columns around, you just click and drag it. And then based on your filters that you can set up, and based on your columns and the way you're sorting and filtering them, you can go ahead and then create views and save those so you don't have to come back and recreate the wheel every time you want to pull some similar information, right? So you might have a spot for, all of your templates, let's say, right? My water damage template, my chiller template, whatever it is, you might have a spot for your template quotes. You might have a spot for all your approved quotes. Or, in our case, for my case, hey, this is everything that needs follow-up, right? These things have been approved, but haven't been converted to jobs. These ones are in draft. They haven't been sent to the customer. This one's been sent to the customer, but they haven't opened it. They haven't read my email, right? And so then we've got customer viewed. So I know throughout this whole process automatically where this quote is living in its own journey. So let's say I popped in here to this quote. I'm now the estimator. I'm now the salesperson, right? And I want to get a proposal off for whatever this work is. I got a spot here to put in internal notes. Customers never going to see these. I've got a spot to put in different attachments. We have a forms tool. So if there's any sort of forms that need to be added in here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Email history, that'll come into play here in just a second. But basically, to like actually build the quote out itself and what the customer is going to see, I'm just going to go ahead and put in, whatever line items that I want to show them. And I can put a lot of detail in here, but only show the customer, let's say, the totals, or just show the customers, let's say, a breakdown of labor and material, but not all the line items that go into it. You'll see here in just a second, we can do a lot of granular detail. So what's this? A lighting replacement. We're going to just say remove old lights. And what are we going to do after that? We're going to install new lights. Look, you guys, don't give me a hard time here. Obviously, you can break this down in a lot more detail. And how you break it down, totally up to you. Some folks will do underground, rough in, trim out. Some folks will do it by system, right? Or by fixture, like, okay, lighting, distribution, controls. Some folks will break it down, equipment. Don't let my example pigeonhole the functionality. If you have specific questions, throw them in here. Happy to answer those. But very flexible. I'm using a very basic example to give you all kind of an overview. So for whatever line items you have in here, you can break it out into more detail. Maybe you've got a labor line item you want to put in there. Maybe you've got a material line item that you want to put in here, right? And again, you can break this out into as much detail as you want. So we'll just call these, fixture A, right? How much does fixture A cost? I don't know. That's why I got pricing from my vendor. These things are going to be $150 a piece. How much do I want to mark those up? Let's say we're going to mark them up 25%. If you do it on markup or margin, totally up to you. We support either way. You could also go the other direction and just say, hey, how much do I want to sell it for? I want to sell this thing for $200, right? And it'll do the math backwards for you. How many of these things? 100 of them. And again, don't let my, little example here sort of pigeonhole the functionality. The idea is that we're now rolling up these dollars, right? I'll do something similar down here for the installation. You can have different labor types with different labor costs and different labor rates. So totally up to you. You know, how many hours do we think it's going to take? Say 100. And basically we're rolling this up. Now, you're like, Justin, that's I don't want to show all of that detail to my customer. That's too much information for them. You're able to pare down what the customer is actually going to see. And you can set up your own default so you don't have to flip every switch every time. And then what are we going to do with that? We're going to drag it over here onto your template. My template might not look anything like the template that you all use today. As long as you can recreate your template in Word, I'll be able to recreate it here. Now, because all of this data we put into the system is what we call structured data, that means it's reportable. So when I'm coming in as a manager and I want to take a look at, let's say my sales dashboard, this is customizable as well. So if there's different metrics you'd like to see or different ways you'd like it laid out, just know that this is just an example of what we're doing here. So, we can produce what we call a scorecard. Basically, you take some number, you add some numbers together. That's the scorecard. In this case, we got a scorecard for how many quotes are outstanding, pending. How many quotes have we won? Well, you might go, well, one in what time frame? Boom. We've got different date filters that we can provide. You could, if you want to see this month over month, year over year, if you want to see quarter to date, totally fine. You can set up your defaults. You can switch between them. You can also set up targets. So if you have a goal, we talked about setting goals and making sure those are reportable and making sure they're visible to the team. We call this what do you call it? It's a gauge. Basically, the closer you get to the goal, the more the needle moves. Pretty basic stuff there. Heat maps. Maybe you're in multiple territories and multiple cities, and you want to see this information displayed in a heat map. Not a problem at all. Line charts, bar charts. What's the round one called? Pie chart on the data, depending on what it is. Is it broken out by salesperson? Right? It's a pie chart broken out by salesperson. Maybe it's a sales chart broken out by a job type. That's super important in there as well. And then, of course, we can give it to you like in a standard table view, depending on what the information is. You can also create what we call like drill down tables. So when we got some top level numbers here, and then we can click into them and expand and click in and get more detail. And again, these are just some example reporting that we can do. Now we can automate the distribution of this information. So if you want your sales team to see this or some subset of this information every Monday morning, we can do that. If you want them to get a list, let's say, of all of their outstanding quotes or the quotes that are coming due in the next 14 days, whatever it is, we can parse that information out and send it to them in a list or a report via email. So all of the information that I put in here isn't a dead end. If I'm using Excel, it's basically a dead end. I put the information in, it doesn't do anything else for me. So based on the status of the job, based on the amount of the job, right? Based on the job type, what type of job is it? We can then start doing reporting, providing that reporting to the team at a regular cadence so that they don't have to go in and try to find it. One thing that I'm really good at is if you give me a list of things to follow up on, I will knock that list out every single time. If I got to kind of just like remember what I didn't finish yesterday, that's a 50-50 shot. I'm going to remember everything. But as long as I get a list, and I think a build ops really helps with that. Talked a little bit about job type. This is a customizable drop down for whatever type of work that you might want to track. Track it by department, track it by salesperson, track it by when the quotes due by, all the above. So, we got our quote, and we send it off. We want to send it off to the customer, right? How do I do that? I click the big green button up at the top. It's going to put the contact in there, but I can add other contacts if I want. Send it to Joe, send it to John. There's a message and there's like a body of the message, and you can default that. You can have different templates, or you can come in here and write your own love note in, and then send that off. So this quote was a draft, right? It was due by Friday. It was a draft. It was assigned to John. Pretend I'm John. I went in there. I came in, sent this thing out. Well, now what's the status of the quote? It's sent to customer. So I know if I go back to my board of quotes, which quotes have been sent to the customer, which ones have the customers opened the email, which ones have viewed the quote, which ones haven't been sent to, which ones have been approved, etc. So let's go ahead and let's pop in and actually see what the customer gets on their side. Give me 1 second here. We'll fire up old Gmail. All right, here we go. So name of your company, title of the quote, who's sending the quote. Mine's coming from a no reply at BuildOps, but that could come from your email address. So it'd be your email address here. Your logo, customer info, title of the quote again, quote number, your love note. Now, because I've opened that email, if I come back in here, we'll go ahead and refresh this. We'll see that the status of that quote has changed, right? Based on the action that I took by opening it, right? It says email read. If you come over here in the email history, not only can we see that it was sent, but that it was successfully delivered as well, right? So they read the email. Notice there was no read receipt. So if some folks try to do this with a read receipt, and I don't know if you've seen it before, but it like pops up on the screen and you got to click yes. There's none of that. Because I don't know about you guys, when I get those pop-ups, I instantly hit no. Sorry for whoever sends me those. Now, the next kind of step is you got to view the quote. You got to pop the quote open, which again will then update the status of the quote to customer viewed. Oh, Neil asked great questions about inclusions and exclusions. Let me pop back in here and show you. I appreciate you bringing that up because I totally didn't touch on it. So for like terms and conditions and inclusions and exclusions, you would set those up right in here. They could be on a second page. You can say, hey, page break, terms and conditions. Have 2 pages of terms and conditions behind this thing. Or you can start with like some inclusions and exclusions by default. And I didn't mention this before, total oversight on my part. This you can edit just like it was a Word document. You can come in here and make changes to this template on the fly as needed. You can remove some of the inclusions and exclusions. You can add some padding so things pop into the next page. You can do bullets and numbers. Like this should look pretty familiar, this stuff up here. And then what we're doing is we're auto-filling what we call smart fields. So I know what the date is today. I know who the customer is. I know all this information. And so I'm going to auto load that on the quote, but the rest of it, you can edit as you see fit. And you can have different templates for different types of work that you're quoting. So that's super helpful there. Great question, Neil. I appreciate you keeping me honest on that one. Kind of going back to the customer, they pop the quote open, and then they can approve or reject it, right? In this case, we're going to reject this thing. We're going to say, no, thanks. Now, hopefully they give you a little more information than that. But the reason I rejected this quote is because I want to produce another version of this quote. And we have the ability to track multiple versions of these proposals and where they are in their life cycle. And what did the old version, the original version that I looked at? Because you know what they do is like you recommend that they do X, Y, and Z, but they only want to do X and Y. And you're like, hey, Z is super important. They're like, just do X and Y. And you want to log of that. Like, hey, listen, because when X breaks, you want to go back and be able to say, hey, I recommended that you take care of that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new version, right? The first version was rejected. I created a new version. I came in here, made some changes, made some updates, added some lines, removed whatever y'all need to do. Rinse and repeat again. Send that off to the customer. Now, if the customer calls you and goes, "Hey, yep, all looks good, it's approved," you can approve it manually if you need to. So you can come up here and click approve. Now, before I do that, I also want to point out some folks have an internal review before this quote goes to the customer. You can go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and flag this thing as review needed, and then the manager gets a report of all the quotes that need to be reviewed, right? Rejected, approved, etc. We also have what we call tags, and so if you're waiting on vendor pricing, you can go ahead and throw that tag on there, that you're waiting on vendor pricing, and you can then filter your list of quotes down for everything that is in vendor pricing needed. Let's see, do I have that one already? No, I don't, but you know what? I'll show you how quickly we can do it sort of on the fly, right? So we'll come in here, add a filter. What are we going to filter by? We're going to filter by tag. Tag is in, vendor pricing needed. Boom. So these are all of the quotes that are in that category of vendor pricing. And then what I can do is I can now save that as a new view, right? So it's like waiting, waiting, I'll move my mouse out of the way, waiting on vendor pricing. Boom. Now, that could just be my view and nobody else sees that. I don't clutter them up with that. But, this is something that other folks are probably going to use. So I can make that public, meaning that other users in the system will now be able to see that filter. And they could jump in and go, all right, click, boom, everything that's waiting on vendor pricing. And now this is just one example, right? There's other, you can get as granular as you need to help facilitate the workflow around these. Super helpful. Again, if y'all got questions, throw it in the chat. We're still working on this quote. We had a new version of it. They didn't like the last version. I sent them the new version. They called me up and they go, "Hey, Justin, looks great. Let's go." So what I can do here is I can just manually approve it, put in some notes, let's just say approved by phone. Maybe they gave you a PO number for this. Boom. Go ahead and get that thing approved. Now, we won't get into it too much today, operationalizing this, but what we're going to be able to do is convert this thing into a job or a project, issue POs off of this. We mentioned before, we're doing a lot of different reporting. Reporting is going to be customizable. So as long as it's in the system, we should be able to pull some great reports on that. Break it up however you all see fit, by job type, by tag, by salesperson, by region, by department. And then because you've set your goals, you're measuring against those goals, there's transparency. And with that transparency, we can enforce accountability. So with that said, I'm kind of curious, for the folks, the folks that we got, if you're interested in, learning a little bit more about BuildOps, we can throw some contact information up here, but just let me know, is this something that resonated with you all today? Is this something that looks like, that you might be able to use? How does it compare sort of to what y'all are doing today? What I hear today is, most folks are just working on spreadsheets, and the limitations there. Some folks are working off of whiteboards, so that's great if I'm sitting at my desk and I can see the whiteboard. But I might be out in the field. So BuildOps is a cloud-based program. We got a mobile app that goes with it, so that if your folks need to generate draft quotes out in the field, your technicians can also surface information back to you. We call that a recommendation. And when they're surfacing those recommendations from their mobile app, I can then quickly convert those into quotes. So if there's anyone out there who is looking to see our contact information, I'll throw that up on the screen here. Leave you all with that here for a little bit, but really appreciate the time. Wrapped up a little bit early today, but give you a couple minutes back in your day. Any questions that y'all have, feel free to reach out. I'll stand by here on the Q&A for a little bit, see if anything pops up there. But until next time, really appreciate y'all.